Hey, how you doing there again, folks? Me again, of course, Brandon Wenzel, coming back at you. Another offering off my sampler platter. Yes, hey, folks, I'm Platter video series, videos I do for a while now. We're going to go over there and try out food and drink items. I eat the stuff, I drink stuff, and folks, I'm going to talk about the stuff. I'm going to let you know all that you need to know about hopefully delicious stuff that, at the time I'm doing this, folks, depending on how this review goes, I may or may not be going over there and setting up a trip to Cuba. But we'll see. But in the meantime, while I'm, waiting to decide on that, I'm inside the truck, but I'm not wearing a grody work shirt. Usually when I'm in the truck, I'm wearing a grody work shirt, but today I'm wearing a cool shirt. When I wear a cool shirt, I like to highlight the cool shirt. What cool shirt am I wearing? Boom! We're still doing the Judo Master shirt. Been wearing this. If you watch my videos, you know that I typically do these reviews in batches, so you're going to see the Judo Master shirt for a few. I love Judo Master. If you're not familiar with Judo Master, first of all, watch the Peacemaker series from DC. He shows up in that, but it doesn't look like this. He doesn't have the... I was so disappointed, especially because they went over there and they gave Peacemaker, like, his original outfit, even with the goofy helmet. I was like, surely they'll... That was my only letdown. But I love Judo Master. He's an old comic book character from a company called Charlton Comics. He's now owned by DC, though they very rarely do anything with him, but I loves him. He's the master of judo. What more do you want? Anyway, folks, what am I trying for y'all today? Why I may or I may not be going to Cuba? Well, you probably already saw the title, but in case you didn't, we're reviewing. Gotta open the thing for a proper boom. Boom! Cuban sandwich from, I'm gonna go ahead and say Crème. It's CR, one of those fancy E's that's got a apostrophe looking thing above it, an M and an E. Crème, that's what I'm going with. The fuck is Crème? Crème is, I think it's a food truck, but then it also has like buildings attached to it, and then it also has like a little promenade outdoor area that's like just covered up by some plastic at the moment, which was a little bit hard to eat in because it's a little bit chilly today, but luckily I'm a pretty burly dude, so I was just fine with it. But yeah, so this is a local spot to me, so I can't go over there and be like, you have to be local to be part of this experience. I went over there. I've done a couple of Cuban sandwich reviews. I did one from Potbelly, and then I did one from, I think it was Jimmy John's, I want to say. And when I decided to go to this place, because it happens to be near a comic book store that I decided to go to today, I figured, fuck it, man, we'll lunch and stuff. As soon as I saw they had a Cuban sandwich on there, I was like, I have to do a review, right? Why? Because I love Cuban sandwiches. Cuban sandwiches are phenomenal when they're done properly. It remains to be seen if this one will be done properly. I will say this, my lunch was good, but I got this to go. So, folks, what is a Cuban sandwich? It's typically like a marinated pork. Then you get like, I've seen it different ways. Typically what the thing seems to be is Swiss cheese. I have definitely had it with American cheese. And I've seen people say that that's how it's done, but almost every recipe I saw said Swiss. So you have yellow mustard. And then another weird thing is that typically they say that there's pickles on it. Almost every place I've gotten it from has not included pickles. So there's obviously variations, but we'll see how this whole thing goes. Now, right off the bat, it's not a bad looking sandwich. Oh, and one of the key things is you have to go over there and have like this very specific bread. It's like, I think it's like a French bread, and then it's like pressed down and everything. You can see grill marks and such. Now, I will say, in terms of the pork, that is definitely not the type of pork that I have had. Like I say, usually it's almost like a pulled pork kind of thing, and it's like marinated in like a red sauce. This looks a little bit more standard pork, but it does look good. And then, looks like they got Swiss cheese. Also, yeah, okay. I forget what those, cabbage? I'm going to say cabbage. And then it looks like there's some ham, and then there's some pickles. So, I'm not the biggest pickle guy in the world, but I will try with the pickles first, and we'll go from there. Let's find out if this Cubano sandwich is the real deal. How? The bread's good. It's nicely toasted. Nice little oomph. Really interesting. So this, I have to say, is unlike any Cubano sandwich that I've had previously. Similar in some ways, but very different in others. First and foremost, it's really good. Like, it's a very, very tasty sandwich. I like that all the flavors are very distinct. I will say, I think they could have done with a little bit more Swiss cheese. Typically when I've had the Cubano sandwich, the cheese is pretty prominent. This one is a little bit more subdued, and I think it's a little bit of a shame because I think it's a nice added feature of the sandwich. But pork is really tender. And it's going to sound stupid, it's very pork tasting. I don't know, like I said, it's definitely not the typical style of pork that I've had in Cubano sandwiches, where it's more like a pulled pork kind of in a marinade, usually in like some sort of a red sauce. So it's very different in that regard. But the pork itself tastes really good. Like it tastes it's very distinctly pork. It's not just like because with all the flavors that are going on in it, it could very easily be lost and just be like, oh, it's just a meat flavor, But pork is a very distinct meat, especially when it's done properly. In this case, that seems to be the case. Seems like they did a really good job with it. Now, the other thing is, even though it's not marinated in, any type of like a red sauce or anything like that, what kind of makes up for that a little bit is the addition of the pickles and especially the cabbage. I didn't think, you heard me say it, folks. I'm not lying. I'm not a big fan of pickles. But if you use pickles correctly, I'm down with them. I'm perfectly fine with them. But you have to use them correctly. Don't just throw pickles on shit for the sake of throwing pickles on shit. The pickles actually work really well with this. In combination with the savoriness of the pork, plus the very distinct flavor of the Swiss cheese, and especially with the acidity of the cabbage, which I'm guessing maybe it's like a braised cabbage or something like that. It has this nice acidity that works really well, and it almost gives it like a, I don't want to say a tomatoey taste, but like how a tomato has like an acidity to it, right? So if you have like a tomato sauce, it typically has a type of acidity to it. That's kind of what it brings to it. So that in combination with the pork, even though it's a different flavor than, the typical stuff, like I said, the marinated pork, it ends up having a somewhat similar flavor profile. Because you're still getting the pork, you're still getting an acidity. What you're not getting is the more tomatoey taste and everything. But this is a really tasty Cuban sandwich. Now, is it the best tasting Cuban sandwich I've had? No. I've had better. But all around, this is very well constructed. And while it's definitely not the most authentic Cuban sandwich I've ever had, it is a good deal closer than something like what Jimmy John's has to offer as a Cuban sandwich. That's nothing. This, at the very least, most of the elements are here, if just a bit different and distinct from at least the classical ways that I've had it. And I don't know if those are the most classical ways. I've had it from restaurants where it seemed to be more on point with what I've seen online in terms of like the recipes for Cuban sandwiches. But it's genuinely really good. Like I said, I didn't think that I would be down with the pickles, but I think the pickles actually work in this, especially with the pork, since the pork has it has almost a gamey taste to it compared to something like beef, which is, it's a more direct savoriness. There's a little something extra with pork. But I don't know how much the ham is doing, But I do think that it's adding something, even if it's not the most distinct. Maybe that's just the benefit of having ham and then the thicker pork on it. Maybe that's why the pork flavor is coming through so well. But yeah, man, I mean, like I said, more Swiss cheese personally would have been preferred. I definitely prefer the marinated pork style, but I like that this is an option, and I like what they did with it, especially with the addition of the cabbage. That's nothing I would have personally thought of, but it kind of makes this thing because, like I said, even though I have had, a decent amount of Cuban sandwiches over the course of my life, this one for me is unique. It is definitely its own thing, and it definitely has its own charm to it. Now, again, not the most authentic, but again, doesn't have to be. At the very least, as long as you're beating out Jimmy John's. I don't care. They did a thing recently where they did a ranking of all the sub shops in America and where they rank and everything. Jimmy John's was way too high. Way too high. I'm sorry. If you like Jimmy John's, that's fine. Way too high, though. Way too high, in my opinion. I don't hate Jimmy John's, but anyway, this is a solid Cuban sandwich. This makes me happy. I'm going to go over there. They even cut it properly, too, which I do appreciate. They cut it in 2 different cuts. I am going to go over there, finish this one off, save the rest for lunch at work tonight. And, yeah, I mean, 2 questions have to be asked. Would I get it again? And would I recommend it to people? Question number 1, I think I would. I think if I were coming back to Crème or Cream or however the hell they want to pronounce it, I think that I would go over there. I would get this on occasion. Now, if this is the first time I've ever been to Crème, or whatever again, so it probably isn't going to be the next thing that I go try. I'm going to, kind of make my way through their menu. But this is definitely something that I could see as being a stalwart option. Now, that said, is it the place that I'm going to go to if I specifically want a Cuban sandwich? No. I have a couple other places that, for me, I prefer their Cuban sandwich options, but this is still a good one. Would I recommend it? Again, that's kind of a hard one to go off of because you kind of have to be local to where I live, but I would. And I would recommend Crème. It's a little bit pricey. But then in the world we're living in, everything's a little bit pricey these days. This was actually off their specialty menu, so I don't know if this is going to be available all the time or how they're doing that whole thing. But at least while it's available, if you happen to be in the area, give it a shot. If nothing else, let this video inspire you to try a Cuban sandwich. Anyway, folks, that's going to do it for me on this one. 5 things before I get out of here. Have yourself a great rest of your day, spectacular rest of the week, monumental rest of the month, stupendous rest of your year, and folks, you go over there and have yourselves a Cuban sandwich rest of your life. Now, I'm not going to be going over there and setting up a trip to Cuba. Not quite yet. Nothing against you fine Cuban folks. I'm sure you're wonderful people. This sandwich is good. It's not quite worth me going over there and getting out a plane and going straight to Cuba to get more Cuban sandwiches. But I got 2 final things, folks, for you. Number 1, try to bring some positivity to the world. It's not always possible. It is, however, always appreciated. But you can't do it all the time. I know I can't do it all the time. Here's what you do, folks. You try not to be an asshole. It's not always the easiest thing to do in the world, especially, we're over here. Yeah, there's delicious Cuban sandwiches out there. But we might not always have delicious Cuban sandwiches available, and let us hope that time never comes, folks. But if it ever does, take a step back, try to mitigate the level of assholishness in our lives, hopefully do better for ourselves and for those around us. Very final thing, folks, do the thing. Whatever the thing is for you, that's what I want you to go out and do. Folks, maybe you're going to go out and you're going to watch this video, and you're going to go out and you're going to try yourself a Cuban sandwich. I would suggest it. But maybe, unlike me, you're going to be so wowed, you're going to be like, shit, man, I'm going straight to Cuba. You go over there, it's a whole thing. I mean, El Presidente is dead now, but I'm not sure if his brother is still in power. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about what's going on with Cuba day to day. Yeah, nothing against Cuba. I don't know what goes on day to day in most countries except for the one that I live in, and even that is more tangentially. But maybe you go to Cuba, maybe there's wonderful people, maybe you go over there, you meet a spicy senorita or senor. Do they speak Spanish in Cuba? Or is it can't be Cuban, right? Like they have El Presidente. It's got to be Spanish. I'm sorry, Cuba. I like your food, though. I really do. Even if I'm bastardizing your culture and heritage to a certain extent. I do it with love. But maybe you go over there, you meet a special someone, You know, it's a whole whirlwind romance thing. Will it, won't it last? You know, you don't know. You don't know. But maybe you go over there regardless. Maybe you make your way back, write some novels about it. Go over there, you call up Fabio. He's still around. You want to go over there and pose for, you know, for the cover of your romance novel. You make the millions, folks. That's all I'm saying. The Cuban experience. Inspired by Cuban sandwich. Or conversely, maybe just go out and get yourself some delicious Cuban food because it's increasingly available, at least where I'm around. So, bye.